All right, happy Sunday morning to everyone. We are officially on the Sunday of week 12 of the NFL season. We have quite a lot to unwrap here because I did not make videos last week like I should. Uh, I was lazy, I was traveling for Thanksgiving, so we're going to catch up on some things real quick. Um, Starting with the uh, let me go back. So, trying to think of the last videos I made. I made predictions for um, last week, so let's wrap those up. So we had I went over I believe I went over the games for last week, but we'll run through them real quick. I had Cincinnati picked to beat Baltimore, incorrect. Chargers to beat Green Bay, incorrect. Cleveland to beat Pittsburgh, correct. Houston to win, correct. Jacksonville to win, correct. Miami to win, correct. Dallas to win, correct. Chicago to win was incorrect. No, I had Detroit picked to win that game. That's I had Detroit. I'm looking at it wrong. Um, Chicago almost pulled the upset, but Detroit pulled it out in the end. I had Washington to beat New York, incorrect. San Francisco to win, correct. Buffalo to win, correct. Seattle to beat the Rams, and Geno Smith got hurt, missed part of the game, came back in, but it was not enough for the Seahawks to pull out the win. Rams won that game. The Sunday night game, I had Minnesota picked to beat Denver. I could have really went either way on that one. That was kind of a toss up in my opinion. But ultimately, I decided to go with Minnesota because they had been on a little bit of a hot streak, as well as Denver. But I thought Josh Dobbs had a little bit more time in the system, and I thought he would pull it out. And unfortunately, he did not. Denver pulled that out. Russell Wilson and their offense, they didn't really produce a lot. They produced a lot of field goals early, but they did get a touchdown later. And one thing that so Russell Wilson to I believe Cortland Sutton, maybe I believe that's who it was, had the amazing touchdown catch in the game against there we go the game against Buffalo. Uh, I believe due to next gen stats, that catch probability was maybe I think around 3%, and that was the lowest completed pass. That was that was the. I'm trying to figure out the right way to word this because I don't want to word it, and I'm not happy with this camera. Um, Next Gen Stats gave that a like a 3.2% chance of being completed due to where Russell Wilson was when he threw the ball, where the receiver was when they threw the ball, the where the defenders were, because there are chips in the pads that tell how far the defenders are away. So that tells you your separation, tells you the location on the field, and it was a 3.2% completion that pass would be completed, and it was, and that is the lowest probability of a completed pass in the NFL since Next Gen Stats came around. And they followed that up the next week against Minnesota, completing another very, very good touchdown pass in the end zone, obviously in the end zone. But uh, they have that connection has two of the best touchdown passes of the year so far, and that's not really being talked about. But Denver pulled that out. I almost went with Denver, but I was feeling Minnesota, so I went with them. Rolling into the Monday night game, Kansas City against Philadelphia. This was a home game for Kansas City. I had Philadelphia picked. I thought they were a little bit better team. And lo and behold, they pulled it out. Now, a lot of people are saying this was Kansas City lost this game more than Philly won, but I can't I can't say that. Like, yes, Kansas City made a lot of mistakes that could have altered the game. They had several drop passes by the receivers, I believe 5 or 6 in the game, and they lead the league in drop passes this year with 26, I believe. Travis Kelce had a crucial drop on a first down late on a drive that Kansas City was trying to put together to either, I mean, they had to get a touchdown to take the lead. They were down 21-17, so they had to have a touchdown. So Travis Kelce had a drop, which is uncharacteristic. And then I believe it was on third down, MVS Marquez Valdes-Scantling he beat his defender, and he was in single coverage because if you look at the play, they essentially had three people playing coverage on Travis Kelce because they know that's Mahomes' go-to, and they were not going to get beat by an easy completion to Travis Kelce. So they played everyone else in single coverage. MVS was behind the defender. Mahomes put the ball up just about as good as he could have, hit MVS in the hands, and he dropped the pass. And me being a Green Bay fan and having MVS in Green Bay for a few years, this was something I saw often. He did make some good catches on some deep passes, but there was a lot of deep passes that were very catchable that he just did not come down with. So this is who he is, but he dropped it, and it's a play that would have been a touchdown or at worst been first and goal at the 1 or the 2. And I'm not going to say that this would have changed the game. It would have, yes, it would have put Kansas City up either 23-21 or 24-21, depending on whether the extra point was made or missed. But there was still, I believe, a minute 20 or so on the clock, a little bit of time on the clock. I believe Philadelphia also had a timeout. So I'm not going to say that this would have made Kansas City win the game because there was an opportunity for Philly to try to tie it at 24 with a field goal and go to overtime. It's all speculation. It's all playing out scenarios, but I'm not going to say that Kansas City would have won the game had that pass been completed for a touchdown. It's just, we'll never know. And I know most people will say they would have won, and we'll give them that credit, but I will not. But this was two games in a row. I won't say 2 weeks in a row because Philly had their bye week in between them, but they went into halftime down 17-14 against Dallas. They made adjustments at halftime, and in the third quarter, they shut Dallas down, and they scored 2 touchdowns to go up 28-17 starting the fourth quarter. They made halftime adjustments. Their offense played lights out in the third quarter. Their defense played lights out in the third quarter, and they did what they needed to get the lead and win against Dallas. Now, they had their bye week. Fast forward to Kansas City. They were down 17-7 at halftime to Kansas City. And they come out in the third quarter. They had given up 5 sacks in the first half. Jalen Hurts did not get sacked in the third or fourth quarter. So they eliminated the sacks. They got the protection right. And they scored in the third quarter. They scored in the fourth quarter to get a 21-17 lead. And obviously, I just mentioned the mistakes by Kansas City, but Philly come out and executed in the second half. They shut down that offense. They did what they needed to on their offense. So Philly did what they needed to on both sides of the ball in the second half to allow them to get the lead, and they did hold on to it. Again, it was assisted by Kansas City and their mistakes, but I can't not give Philly the credit they deserve because that one drive didn't allow Philly to come back from being down by 10 points and get a 4-point lead. Philly did that on their own. They come out, they played, and they executed. So that's 2 weeks in a row Philly's been down at halftime to good teams and came back, got the lead in the second half, held on, and won. So at this point, Philly still has not played their best ball. I think maybe a game or two they've played very well and complete football, but they're still not quite doing it. And the fact that they are 9-1 and maybe 9-1, I believe, and they are looking the way they're looking, and they're playing the way they're playing, and they're still improving on a weekly basis. Everybody in the league should be worried about Philadelphia, AFC and NFC. Everybody. If the playoffs go through Philadelphia, which they are putting themselves in a great position to have the 1 seed, they're going to be hard to beat in Philadelphia for anybody. For San Francisco, for Dallas, for Detroit, definitely won't do it. No one in the NFC, I say that. I'm not going to say no one because Philly and, Kansas, San Francisco and Dallas both have the opportunity, and they have the teams that can compete with them in Philly. But playing on the road in January in Philly is going to be difficult, just like playing on the road in San Francisco in January is going to be difficult. And if this team makes the Super Bowl, I think they are equipped to handle teams like Kansas City, obviously, because they just beat them. I think they're equipped to beat a team like Baltimore, who is one of the top teams in the AFC. They're playing Buffalo this week, and if they beat them, that proves that they can beat a team like Buffalo. Cincinnati's kind of on the downfall. Um, Jacksonville's a team I think they could beat. So Philly's a very dangerous team. So I went 9-5 on my picks last week. That brought my season total to 108 wins, 55 losses, just a hair under 66%, which is what we've currently been chasing the last few weeks. And we're now, I know we had 3 games on Thanksgiving, 1 game on Black Friday. I had Detroit, Dallas, and San Francisco on Thursday and Miami on Friday. Obviously, Green Bay beat Detroit. Green Bay come out, played very, very well without some key starters. We'll cover that in a minute. But Green Bay pulled the upset 29-22. And really, it was 29-14 until a late, almost essential garbage time touchdown by Detroit. But Detroit, they stayed in it. They stayed trying to fight, but Green Bay pulled it out. Dallas manhandled Washington as they should have. San Francisco, early on, it was a little bit of a close game with Seattle, but then they stretched it out and won handedly. And then Miami, there was some interesting and wild plays in that game, but Miami pulled out the win. We'll kind of go over these in just a second. We'll go through my picks first. So for the rest of Week 12, we have Pittsburgh hosting Cincinnati. Pittsburgh fired Matt Canada finally last week. It's the first time since I think the 60s or 70s they released a coordinator mid-season. So that shows you how fed up and how done they were with Matt Canada and his offense. So I think Pittsburgh's offense will be a little bit better going forward. But I have, without Joe Burrow playing for Cincinnati, because he is basically done for the season with his wrist injury, I got Pittsburgh winning. Houston is hosting Jacksonville. Houston throttled Jacksonville earlier in the season. I think this game will be the other way around. I don't think it'll be a rout, but I do think Jacksonville will win a close one in Houston today. Indianapolis is hosting Tampa Bay. I think Indianapolis pulls this one out. Tampa Bay's kind of been hit or miss, and they haven't played well in the last few weeks. They lost that close one to Houston a few weeks ago. They lost to San Francisco last week. I don't trust Tampa Bay to on the road with, I believe Indianapolis is coming off a bye week, so they've had time to rest, time to prepare, and their running game is really stout. So I think Indianapolis wins this game. Atlanta's hosting New Orleans. I believe this is New Orleans is leading the division, and this gives them an opportunity to really take control of it. Derek Carr is off the injury report. He has cleared protocols from concussion against Minnesota 2 weeks ago, and had a shoulder injury. He's not listed at all. So with him playing, I think New Orleans wins this game and takes control of that division completely. We have the Giants hosting the New England Patriots. I think New England wins this, although the Giants played really well last week with Tommy DeVito against Washington. I just think Bill Belichick, coming off of a bye and playing against a rookie quarterback, I believe Tommy DeVito is a rookie. It just doesn't go well. It doesn't bode well because Belichick has a very good track record against rookies, and he's a defensive coach. With the way the season's going, he's got to turn something around. I think there's emphasis on that, and I think they will beat the Giants in New York today. Tennessee is hosting Carolina. Both these teams are not good teams, but I think Tennessee will win just because Carolina is the worst team, and Carolina is just not in a position where they don't have the right personnel and the right coaching staff in place. And I say that I don't think they have bad coaches, but everything is about fit. And perfect example of that is I think Nick Sirianni is a good coach, but he is the perfect fit for Philadelphia. his attitude and his demeanor goes well with those players. It goes well with that city and their fans, and it's a perfect fit. And I think that matters. You can have great coaches, but if they're not the right fit, it just doesn't work. And so I just don't. I think the coaching staff in Carolina is good. I think some of the players are good. I just don't think everything fits together right, and it's not all cohesive. So I think Tennessee wins this game. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals hosting the LA Rams. I think the LA Rams are kind of going to they got a good win last week on the road against Seattle. I think they're good. I say that it might have been at home against Seattle. I don't know. They beat Seattle last week, so they have a chance to get a little momentum going heading towards the playoffs. They are on the outside looking in currently, but I think they beat Arizona and try to keep some of that momentum generated and keep rolling towards playoffs. Next, we have Denver hosting Cleveland. This is two very good defenses. Cleveland, obviously, without Deshaun Watson for the season. So uh, DTR is at quarterback, and this is really going to be a defensive game. Obviously, offensively, Denver has the advantage, but I think Cleveland is going to pull the upset here. I think Denver's favored by 2, but I'm going with Cleveland. I think their defense is a little bit better, and I think their offense will find a way. I think they have some good offensive weapons, good running backs, good receivers. I think they'll find a way. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Unfortunately for Antonio Pierce, I believe his stint with the Raiders, he will fall to 2-2. He lost last week to Miami. I think he will lose this week to Kansas City. I think they are the better team, better defense, better offense, and I just don't see them really competing a whole lot with Kansas City, even with Kansas City's issues. This could be a chance for Kansas City to really get their offense rolling and get it in somewhat of a rhythm after their struggles against Philly last week. Speaking of Philly, the next game is Philly versus Buffalo. They are hosting Buffalo. This is um, the second game of a brutal 5-game stretch for the Eagles. If they win this, they really set themselves up for. Uh, I mean, they're already in the driving seat for the 1 seed because they're the only one-loss team in the NFC. Every other team has 3 losses after Detroit lost to Green Bay the other day. So if they win this, go to 10-1 with 5-6 games left of the season, they're in a position that they can lock up the 1 seed. Um, Essentially, it'll be locked up early, I think, and I'll kind of cover that in a minute. But I think Philly is the better team. I think Buffalo's playing better now that I think I think Josh Allen and the offense kind of clicked last week. I don't necessarily think it's because the coordinator was replaced, because I like others am kind of under the impression that he was let go as a scapegoat and they needed somebody to blame for their issues, and it was him. So with that being said, I think their offense played better because I mean, firing a coordinator, it does send a message. And I think the team rallied and wanted to show like, hey, we're a good team, and they played good last week. I think they'll play good this week, but I think Philly is the better team on both sides of the ball, and it'll be close because Philly's pass defense is bottom of the league. So Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, they can take advantage of that, but ultimately I think Philly is the more physical team. They're the better running offense. They're the better running defense, and I think Philly will control the game for the most part, and I think Philly will pull it out. Tonight we have the LA Chargers hosting the Baltimore Ravens. The Chargers coming off a bad loss to Green Bay. Uh, Baltimore, very good team. They're coming off of a loss to Cleveland. I think they'll want to bounce back, play well. I think both teams will want to bounce back and play well, but ultimately I think Baltimore's the better team. We don't know if OBJ's playing. I don't really think that's going to matter. Chargers defense is pretty bad. Brandon Staley under fire. Um, really was snippy with the media last weekend after the loss. I think that will continue, and I think Baltimore will win, and he will have to answer for his defensive calls yet again. So we'll see what kind of attitude he has this week. And the Monday night game, we have the Vikings hosting the Bears. I'm going for an upset here with the Bears winning. The Bears played pretty well against Detroit last week, forced Goff into some turnovers. Fields played good with his first game back. I think that will continue, and I think the Chicago Bears will upset the Vikings on Monday Night Football. Now, the the games over the games have already happened. We'll go ahead and cover those. So, what was odd about the Miami Jets game was Tua threw a pick six late in the second quarter. They were up 10-0, and it was 10-6 at this point because the Jets missed the extra point. Next drive, Tua throws another interception. Ball's on around the close to the 50-yard line, but it's 2 seconds on the clock, so the Jets opt to go for a Hail Mary. So Tim Boyle gets in there, he heaves it up there, and Miami intercepts it at the goal line, and Miami runs it the distance, all the way down the field, cuts it across the field. He dodges everybody, and Miami turns it into a pick six to go into half up 17-6. So that was a wild sequence of events with Tua throwing a pick six, very next drive throwing another pick, and then Tim Boyle throwing a pick six to go into halftime. Just really devastating for the Jets because they generated some momentum with the two interceptions, pick six and the pick, and then just to have the offense just give it all away. At this point, the Jets need to be smart, and as much as I want to see Aaron Rodgers come back and play the same season he tore his Achilles, at this point the Jets are I don't think there's any chance they make the playoffs at this point. I guess theoretically they're not eliminated, but they need so much to go their way. They pretty much have to win out. They need so many teams to lose along the way. Uh, it's just hard to see, and I don't want the Jets to put him out there and him to get hurt and have a setback on his injury. As much as I'd love to see him play, I don't think it's smart. Um, Not a whole lot to talk about with the San Francisco game. They got a lot of pressure on Geno. They got plenty of sacks. McCaffrey did his thing. Debo did his thing. The offense, Purdy played well. He did throw a pick six. That was his only real mistake of the game, but he did play pretty well. And San Francisco's rolling after their three straight losses. One to Cleveland where they lost, McCaffrey, Debo, and Trent Williams all in the game. Purdy still drove down the field for a potential game-winning drive, got them in a makeable field goal range, uh, like 81, 82% completion field goal rate or conversion rate, and the kicker missed. Not really on Purdy. He did his part. The following week, he got concussed against the Vikings. They lost that game, and then the following week, they played the Red Hot Bengals. He made a couple. He didn't play terrible in that game. He didn't play great either, but they lost those three in a row, had their bye, and since then they have been on fire. They beat Jacksonville 34-3. They manhandled Tampa Bay last week, and they manhandled Seattle this week. And since their bye, they traded for Chase Young during the bye. They have produced 15 sacks in their last three games, and that is wild. Getting 5 sacks per game. San Francisco is a team a lot of teams need to worry about in the NFC and coming when it comes to playoffs and the Super Bowl. Um, I mean, we're basically looking at a potential rematch in the NFC Championship, Philly and San Francisco. And if San Francisco's healthy, they're a team that's equipped to play with Philly and possibly beat them. That would be a juggernaut of an NFC Championship game, and I would love to see it happen. Uh, Detroit Green Bay game. So Green Bay is underdog here. I think it was 8.5 points, and I was watching it with some friends out of town, and Green Bay won the toss and elected to receive the ball, and I was like, "Ooh, that's bold to win the toss and take the ball." Because like if you do that, I was telling them, I was like, most teams don't do that because you know if you do that, you've got to make a statement. Like you're saying, we want the ball. Our offense is about to do something, and we're going to do it. And sure enough, first play of the game, 53-yard completion down the field, Love to Watson, and they punched that drive in for a touchdown right off the bat, up 7-0. I believe Detroit went down and scored, missed the extra point, so it's 7-6 at this point, I believe. Green Bay goes down, scores again, makes it 14-6. And then they get a fumble return, a Jared Goff fumble return for a touchdown, missed the extra point, so it's 20-6. I mean, Green Bay was just on it, throttling them. Got another touchdown later in the game, went for two, because Detroit got a touchdown, went for two, so it was 14 to essentially. No, maybe they got a field goal, and then uh, they went up 29-14, so a 15-point lead. They went for two to try to make it a 17-point lead, missed it, but it's still 15 points. And from that point, they were able to hold on. They were still aggressive with the lead, throwing passes, trying to keep drives going instead of just the conservative run the ball 3 times, milk the clock as much as we can. And I hate when they do that. I hate when any team does that unless you're built to get first downs in the running game, which Green Bay is not at this point. Because you run 2 minutes off the clock and you give them the ball right back. I would much rather get a few first downs and run much more time off the clock. So they were passing, they were aggressive, trying to get the first downs, and they did so, and they held on. They won. Very good win. Gets them to 5-6, and theoretically, I believe they're in the 8 or the 9 seed right now in the NFC. They are on the outside looking in as it pertains to the playoffs. But if they play Kansas City next week, which they'll probably lose. I mean, it's Kansas City. They're a very good team. But they can end up 10-7. And if they end up 10-7, and Seattle, who is ahead of them, and they actually have the last wild card spot right now, and Minnesota's also ahead of them in the wild card race. But if Green Bay ends up tied with Seattle, I believe they have tiebreakers, or they will have the tiebreakers with the way the season will shake out, because Seattle's playing Dallas, they're playing, they're going to play Philly, they're playing San Francisco again, so they could easily lose those 3 games, and Green Bay will have a tiebreaker on them when it comes to a wild card spot. So Green Bay is in a position that they can make an outside run at the playoffs. It's going to be difficult because they have 3 difficult games, 3 easy games. We have Kansas City, difficult game, and then we end the season against Minnesota and Chicago. Both will be difficult. And then in the middle, we're playing the Giants, the Buccaneers, and I'm not sure who the other one is. But that third game is a winnable game. I do know that. I'm trying to think who it is. Give me a second. I'm spitballing here. I'm trying to think if it's AFC or NFC. Um, Maybe it's Cincinnati. I don't know. I'm gonna look real quick. But either way, it's 3 games that they have a chance to win, and if they win those 3 and they can beat Minnesota and Chicago to end the season, it'll be great. It's Panthers. Panthers is that other game that they can play and beat. So um, Green Bay's got a chance to make playoffs. Personally, I would love to see them in the playoffs, but at the same time, I'm okay if they miss the playoffs, because um, it just gives us a better draft pick not making the playoffs, and um, we need some help on the team. But the good thing is we have the youngest or second youngest offense in the NFL. We have one of the cheapest offenses in the NFL. And right this year, we're carrying $40 million of dead cap money for Aaron Rodgers that will not be on the books next year. So the team will have a lot of cap space next year. We'll have a young offense. We'll have a cheap offense, and we'll be in a position to where maybe we can beef up the offensive line, uh, maybe move off of a defensive player or two that's not living up to expectations, get some good draft picks, maybe get some good free agents, and really have a solid team set up to win for the next 3 or 4 years. So I kind of like the position Green Bay is in. They're starting to get it together. The play calling looks a little bit better. It looks like Love is getting a little bit more familiar and more, and I say familiar, he's probably been familiar with the playbook, but he's looking more comfortable in the play calls and the play selection. And it looks like because all his receivers, his tight ends are rookies, his number 3 receivers are rookie, his 1 and 2 are second year guys. They look like they're starting to get on the same page. They look like they're starting to get in sync and be um, seeing the field the same and making the same reads, and it's starting to show in the offense. The offense is starting to play better, and I think that will translate to helping the defense play better. But we'll just have to see if they can continue this momentum. Again, they play Kansas City next week. Tough game, but I think they have the potential to pull it off. So, um, and what I was saying with Philly being in, if they win today, putting themselves in a position to win the 1 seed, they'll play San Francisco next week. Difficult game. They'll play Dallas the week after that. Difficult game, and then they will play Seattle at the end of that stretch, and then they will end the season playing the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. So if Philly wins, say they lose to San Francisco and to Dallas, that puts them at 3 losses, but they beat the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. That will put them tied with Dallas and San Francisco. Inside the division, they'll be tied with Dallas. They'll have the same division record as Dallas, and they will win due to conference records, conference wins, or conference win percentage, because Dallas has lost to all NFC teams, whereas Philly has lost to 1 AFC team. So that will give Philly the advantage, and they will win the division. That will put them, if San Francisco wins out, that will put them tied with San Francisco. San Francisco gets the 1 seed. If San Francisco drops a game, then obviously that puts Philly in the 1 seed. Or if Philly beats San Francisco or Dallas, either one, and then they can lose to one, but if they beat the other and then they win the rest of their games, Philly still wins the division and they get the 1 seed. Detroit losing pretty much it doesn't eliminate them from being able to get the 1 seed, but it puts them at a very, very unlikely chance of getting the 1 seed. Dallas is pretty much primed for the 5 seed, unless Philly just has an abysmal end of the season, which I don't see happening. Dallas is primed for the 5 seed, which will put them playing the winner of the NFC South in the wild card round. And then at that point, depending on the other seeds, divisional round, they either go on the road to Philly or on the road to San Francisco. And then depending on how that goes, it puts them going on the road, most likely to the other one of those two for the NFC Championship. And I really don't see them making NFC Championship. And if they do, I don't see them winning it. So it's we're getting to the point where playoff scenarios are coming into play every week. I have some websites I use to kind of play around and predict how things are going to go, to see who's getting tiebreakers over who. So we'll be discussing that on a weekly basis. And that'll be a reoccurring topic. Next week, sometime the next week, we'll start really hitting on MVP and all the major awards, because they're coming down to, some of them are changing on a weekly basis. Some are pretty much locked in at this point, but every game from the rest of the season is going to have huge impacts on who wins these awards. So we'll be discussing that, and we'll see if we can get these picks up to closer to 70%. So currently I am 3-1 on the week. We'll see how we go the rest of the week. And um, if your team is playing today, I hope they win. And we will catch y'all tomorrow or Tuesday with a recap of the rest of the week. Everybody have a good one.